Over the next week, we're going to see a significant pattern change throughout the United States that will lead to heavy rainfall in some areas of the United States, while other areas could receive temperatures well above average. Now, take a look at the GFS model right now. We do see that there's this big ridge located just north of the United States-Canadian border. However, we do have a trough just to the south of it. Now, there's going to be sort of a blocking pattern that's going to exist in the northern portion of the United States, which is going to block this trough from being able to move northward. So, for your Memorial Day weekend for much of the southeast, it should be very rainy, potentially windy as well, and there could be that possibility of flooding in some localized areas. And the same could be said for the Midwest, where we're going to see another trough that's going to just stay trapped over the midwestern portion of the United States, thanks to a blocking pattern that's going to occur in the northern United States that will lead to temperatures much warmer than average as well for much of the northern United States. Now, moving forward with the forecast, we do see that for today, much of Florida should experience very large area of isolated thunder showers throughout the area. However, the low pressure system will continue to get more consolidated as the days progress once this low pressure system encounters a little bit more instability for it to become a more impactful storm, especially for the Carolinas. And moving forward with the forecast, we could also see the slight possibility today of severe weather right along the western portion of Texas, as there's just enough cold air associated with this upper level low to maybe bring those isolated severe thunderstorms where large hail, damaging winds, and maybe the isolated tornado could occur today. However, beyond that point, it seems like the severe weather threat will subside, as there really isn't enough cold air behind this trough to really induce a very convective environment for the Midwest. But you still need to watch out, because over the next several days, you guys are going to continuously experience waves of thunderstorms moving through that will lead to heavy rainfall at times and potentially flooding in some areas, where over the next 5 days you could experience up to 3 inches of rain. And moving forward with the forecast, we see that this ridge continues to build right around the Great Lakes region, and it traps this low pressure system. And since this ridge is very strong and it's relatively close proximity to this low pressure system, that's going to create a pressure gradient to the point where we're going to see the winds increase thanks to this pressure gradient, as well as the instability, because we're going to see a strong northerly flow from the western or the eastern side of this ridge that's going to bring the cooler air further southward and create sort of a nor'easter, but not necessarily located in the northeast. It's mainly going to be located in the southeast. And moving forward with the forecast, there were some discussions whether or not this low pressure system would be considered subtropical, or at least attain some tropical characteristics, because we are approaching the hurricane season. We're almost at the beginning date of the hurricane season, which is in June 1st, and this low pressure system looks fairly similar to what you'd see in a tropical cyclone developing, where we do see that the pressure does drop. The winds surrounding this low pressure system might be considered strong enough to be tropical storm status. However, we have to keep in mind that sea surface temperatures just off the Carolinas are still below the 80-degree threshold, so it's definitely going to need some subtropical characteristics for it to really become as powerful as we're seeing it right now. So it's unlikely that this will attain much of any, or at least enough tropical characteristics to be considered a tropical cyclone. However, its impacts will be very similar to what you'd see with the tropical cyclone right up along the Carolinas, where you should expect very heavy rainfall over a pretty prolonged period thanks to this blocking ridge that's going to make this low pressure system linger, as well as gusty winds thanks to the pressure gradient between this ridge and this low, where the pressure will drop down to 999 millibars and it'll stay over the Carolinas for some time, which of course could lead to, which will of course lead to concerns when it comes to flooding and flash flooding, and maybe even coastal flooding in some localized areas with these gusty winds right up along the coast. However, we eventually will see this low pressure system weaken by the time we approach the Sunday timeframe, as the low pressure system will lose connection from the very warm Gulf Stream waters. That would create a little bit more instability, but since it's going to move over land, it's going to lose its instability. There won't be it won't really have enough warm air surrounding it to really create a very convective environment. So this will weaken, but still watch out for just isolated rain showers over the next several days for much of the southeast, especially along the east coast of the southeast, because of this blocking ridge. But moving towards the Midwest, we're gonna see, like I said, multiple waves of thunderstorms moving through, thanks to a blocking pattern that we're seeing. We're seeing a big ridge located just to the north of this area of troughing, and that's going to force the rain to pretty much stay centered right over the Midwest. And there's going to be just enough instability induced by this ridge, bringing the warmer Gulf of Mexico water towards the southeast, as well as a cooler air mass that's pretty much inherited in the upper level low, that will create multiple waves of thunderstorms over several days, and that could lead to concerns of flooding, and that could certainly enhance the risk overall for flash flooding throughout the Midwest. I don't necessarily expect this to be a major flood threat or necessarily a major severe weather threat either. There just isn't going to be that much lift in the Midwest for that to exist, but there will at least be multiple waves of thunderstorms moving through, so you need to watch out for that possibility over the next several days, especially this weekend for much of the Midwest, and even into later next week. We're going to see those thunderstorms continue, so make sure to pay close attention to that. Now I want to show you guys a 500 millibar height anomaly to show you exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to this blocking pattern that's going to exist in the northern United States. So moving forward with the forecast, we see that there's this big ridge located right over the United States-Canadian border, and we do see that this trough that's going to bring very heavy rainfall and gusty winds along the Carolinas will stay over the same area for quite some time, and that's going to lead to very muggy conditions, very moist conditions for much of the southeast, and this ridge is just expected to linger over the next pretty much week, which will lead to very cloudy and very wet conditions for the southeast, as well as cooler than average conditions, because of course when we see a lot more clouds, that blocks the shortwave radiation from reaching the surface, and that definitely will cool down the temperature over the next week for much of the southeast. And even along the west coast, we do see that this strong ridging just to the north of it will prevent these troughs from being able to move very fast towards the east, which will mean that the thunder showers will linger over the same areas such as the Midwest, like I just mentioned, and temperatures will be much warmer than average where you're right under the ridge in the northern portion of the United States. So you want to pay close attention to that as well, that you could be in for a small heat wave for the northern United States with this amount of ridging that's right over you guys. And the European model is also in very high agreement with what the GFS model is stating, so you definitely want to take this forecast with a high level of certainty at this point. Taking a look at the forecasted temperature anomalies over the next week, we're going to see the effects of this blocking pattern take place in the northern United States, where temperatures for the most part will be well above average. We do see that for much of the northern Midwest. We see that temperatures are hovering right around 10 degrees above average, while for much of the eastern half of the United States, the temperatures are going to fall below average to the point where in some areas, even especially in the Carolinas, you could experience temperatures 20 degrees below average. So it's going to be very cool. It won't feel very summer-like for much of the southeast thanks to this low pressure system that's expected to linger over the same area for quite some time thanks to this blocking pattern, and we're eventually going to see the warmer temperatures move towards the northeast. It's going to take till next week before that occurs, so for this one, at least the early portion of the Memorial Day weekend, temperatures should mainly be around average for the northeast, but we should see temperatures rise above average once this ridge really becomes strong and really moves towards the eastern half of the United States. So, but we do see that the southeast is still experiencing temperatures below average, and same goes for the southwest, where temperatures aren't that much below average. They're hovering around average for the most part, but still slightly below average. So you might notice it some days where it's a little bit cooler than what you typically expect for the late May to early June timeframe. So make sure to keep that in mind, that the temperatures will be much warmer than average and cooler, much warmer than average, at least for the northern United States, but cooler than average for the southern United States. Taking a look at the Futurecast radar to show you guys when exactly you should expect the heaviest rainfall in the southeast. So for today, for much of Florida, you should experience isolated thunder showers. Watch out for that. But they're going to be these thunderstorms are going to be one of those rain for 10 minutes type thunderstorm before it becomes sunny again. So the thunderstorms likely won't last long, but you're going to see that by the late Thursday to early Friday timeframe, thunderstorms become a lot more consolidated. The low pressure system encounters more instability thanks to this ridge bringing a strong northerly flow, and that's going to increase the winds as well as the risk of flooding along the Carolina coast. So keep that in mind in those areas. Taking a look at the forecasted sustained winds over the next several days, we do see that for the Thursday, May 25th, we do see that the winds will remain relatively light for much of the southeast coast, outside of maybe if you're just off the coast, where sustained winds should hover right around the 20s, but that becomes a different story once we move on to the Friday time frame, where we do see that the winds will become much stronger, where the winds will hover close to the 40s when 40 mile per hour range so that's something to keep in mind, and that could lead to coastal flooding in some areas, so you want to definitely pay very close attention to that. And here's the forecasted rainfall over the next 5 days. We do see that much of the Carolinas could potentially experience over 3 inches of rain. Right up along the North Carolina coast, you could experience easily 3 to 5 inches of rain. Same goes for Myrtle Beach. So definitely pay close attention to that. And we could even see that heavy rainfall move towards the more interior portions of South Carolina and North Carolina. Now, it's going to be a very close forecast, because any small difference with the trajectory of this low pressure system could make a big difference when it comes to the amount of rainfall that Carolinas experience. If this low pressure trajectory were to move, let's say, 20 miles to the west, that could mean that some areas of North Carolina would experience 7 inches of rain as opposed to maybe 3 inches of rain. So that definitely plays a major role. We're really going to need to see where exactly this low pressure system will build, and that all depends on the Bermuda ridging just to the east of it, how strong it'll be. If it's a little stronger, then expect to track further westward and more of a flood threat overall for the Carolinas. And we do see that the Midwest could experience over the next 5 days around 1 to 3 inches of rain, which could lead to flooding in some localized areas. So here's my overall forecast when it comes to this next major weather pattern for the United States. Make sure to watch out for the major coastal storm, where you could experience wind gusts over 50 miles per hour along the Carolina coast especially, and of course rain that could be over 5 inches, which will lead to an enhanced risk of flooding, and same goes for the Midwest. And be prepared for a major warm-up as we approach next week, where temperatures should be well above average, and we could see a little bit of a heat wave in certain areas of the northern United States thanks to this blocking pattern that we're going to experience. But I thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather related content.